Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. Today we are going to be breaking down the top restricted cores in the metagame right now. I will also be giving you guys some of the example teams. I'll be pulling a lot of those out of the Victory Road tour from this past weekend. So if you are interested in following along or grabbing some of the example teams like the open team sheets and stuff, feel free to click on the Victory Road link down below. Everything you can and will need will be found there from the example teams anyways. Overall, we're just going to talk about the cores, kind of give you guys some options and what makes the cores go. Give you guys a little bit of my opinions on some benchmarks as well for maybe some of the EV spreads. Overall, though, we're going to just jump right into it, guys. Calyrex, Shadow, Zamazenta. There's no secret that this was going to be the first one here. This is the best core in the format, in my opinion. It has the most synergy between the two pairings, and what we're going to see here more often than not is you're either going to see like a life orb or a focus sash or some sort of item in between that on this team, right? I'm going to put focus sash right now because in my opinion it is the most consistent option. Then you're going to either go Terra Ghost, Terra Dark, Terra Normal. You're either going to stick with Terra Ghost for big offensive outbursts with a focus sash, or you're maybe going to go for like a Terra Dark for some defensive synergies, or even just getting around opposing Calyrex Shadow. But there's a lot to play there. There's a lot of room to be flexible there. Then you're going to have Astral Barrage. If you're running a Calyrex Shadow without Astral Barrage, you are running Calyrex Shadow wrong. I think you want a Psychic move here. I do think Psychic is the best option right now, strictly because you have Zamazenta into core. Size Shock doesn't make a lot of sense. And unless you're pairing this with like an Indeedee somewhere, which you technically could, this core is very, very flexible in terms of what you're allowed to pair beside it. So if you have an Indeedee and you want Expanding Force, sure. But then this third move, which we'll get into in a second, would need to be like a Shadow Ball or something along those lines. However, you're going to see Protect here. And this third move is where a lot of the variation is going to come with your Calyrex Shadow. You can go ahead and run Will-O-Wisp. You can go ahead and run Disable. You've got Encore. I've seen some cheeky ones running around with Imprison, right? There are tons of options on this Calyrex Shadow third move. And what I think the point I'm getting at here is we're not looking at that Regulation G Calyrex anymore. You know, back in Regulation G, it was the piece of your team. It was, I'm going to get this piece set up. It needed to have Nasty Plot. It needed to have Calm Mind. It really needed to get going immediately. That is no longer the case with Calyrex Shadow and Regulation I. Yes, it is still a very key piece of your team. Yes, you still can set it up with Nasty Plot. You still can set it up with Calm Mind. However, I think there is definitely room to play on this core or on this third move, and that I think is where the point that I really wanted to mention. That's what I really wanted to mention here. Just get your testing in. There's so many different options you can do here. Don't just tunnel vision on the Nasty Plot that was so popular in Regulation G, right? Explore, test some other things out, you know. Will-O-Wisp is cool, beats some of the other Zamazentas. Fast Wisp is disgusting. The one that won Worlds in, I believe it was 2022, was Astral Barrage, Snarl, Will-O-Wisp, Protect. Obviously, different format, and something like that worked better in the Dynamax era. However, don't sleep on maybe something like a Snarl as well, right? Tons of cool options for this third move, and that's really all I'm trying to get at. I would go max speed right now. I would not even for a second think about not doing that at this moment. Calyrex Shadow, I believe, was like 60-something% usage in that Victory Road tournament this past weekend. So you're going to be playing a lot of speed ties, which is kind of awful, but at the same time, you don't want to make yourself slower because you at least want to have a chance at it being a speed tie. I don't know. You could technically go slower and ridiculously bulky, but I don't think we're at that time in the metagame where that's going to be a thing. So I would stick with here. And if you're the Focus Sash variant, guys, let's be honest. You can probably get away with Max. You can also do some cool things with surviving Surging Strikes if you wanted to. I believe the number is 44-124. Not guaranteed on that. I believe if I remember correctly, should be 44-124. Should allow you to live. I think it's Terra Water Surging Strikes from a non-boosted Urshifu, which is very interesting. So that could definitely be something, especially if they're running the Terra Water Scarf variant. You don't really want to be getting pranked by that on your Calyrex Shadow. Normally, you're going to see this core paired with like Rillaboom and stuff and some fake out pressure just to keep these two pieces alive. But moving on, we haven't actually talked about the Zamazenta yet, and the body press is disgusting, right? This is what you run this Pokemon for. You run this Pokemon for Body Press. You're normally going to see a Steel move, whether it's Behemoth Bash or Heavy Slam. You're normally going to see Wide Guard to keep yourself safe from all the spread moves in this format, because there's tons of them. And we're going to see Protect normally. This is kind of your Zamazenta moveset. You're probably going to see Terra Dragon more often than not as well. And obviously it's going to have to hold its shield, right? So this is what we're going to see more often than not with the Zamazentas. And yes, it's a very linear concept. And I think in a single restricted format where you had, this was my restricted and this had to be the set, it didn't feel as good, right? It kind of fell off near the end. Everybody was kind of ready for it. But now that you have so much room to play with maybe a different restricted, in this case Cali Shadow, having a restrictive moveset is not necessarily a bad thing, especially when this moveset supports Calyrex Shadow so well, right? Oh, you don't want to get hit by Astro Barrage? Boom, don't worry, I got you, Wide Guard. Oh, there's a Dark type? I got you, Body Press, you know? The synergy of this core is absolutely disgusting. Some quick benchmarks for Zamazenta. I do like max speed. I'm a big believer in max speed. Outpacing all the Ogre puns and just guaranteeing yourself that is very, very nice, especially when you pair this with Cali Shadow. There's a chance that these are the two fastest pieces on the field, and if I can send Astro Barrage Body Press at will, and that's pretty much killing whatever I want it to, unless there's like an AV Pokemon that can like tear a bug, or unless there's like just some really bulky Pokemon. So like some of the super bulky stuff might not be going down to that, but overall you have a lot of opportunities to just take Pokemon and take kills, especially if Zamazenta ends up being faster than other pieces. You can go slower. I wouldn't go too much slower than like, I don't know, I would like to outpace like TU, so I definitely wouldn't go slower. I want to outpace Ursh for sure. I don't want to go 163. I just like max speed, guys. I'm not too familiar with these Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta cores. In terms of benchmarks on the defensive stat, I don't know too much either, but I would generally expect them to sit between this first bump at 156 and the second bump over at 236. Technically, if they go 236, you can go to 210 to make it even for the immediate defense boost when you switch onto the field because of the ability, which is definitely something you could do. So I'd say you'd probably sit somewhere between 156 and 244. I don't know what the exact stat would be, but that's kind of where I would sit with the benchmark. And guys, there's tons of options. Like I said, this is the most synergistic core in the game. Some of the other restricted cores feel a little clunky in terms of what you're actually able to put beside it. You can put anything beside this. I've seen players put Tailwind. I've seen players go back to the Shenpao like they did in Regulation G beside this Zamazenta. Basically what I'm saying is there's tons of flexibility here. And yes, I can only cover a couple example teams. But we've seen Instant, we've seen Ursh, we've seen Rilla, we've seen Tailwinds, right? But if you're looking for a starting point, guys, definitely take a look at some of those example teams on the side. That is where I would start if I were to pick up a Calyrex Shadow Zamazenta core right now. Somewhere over there, and you know, play the team a little bit, see what I like, see what I don't like, and make my changes from there. Other than that, let's move on to the next core. Moving on to core number 2 is actually going to be Lunala and Miraidon, and this was a concept that I think people knew was going to be good. I think people didn't really expect it to be this good this fast. I think everybody was kind of expecting it to kind of need to settle into the metagame, but obviously it did just get third in that recent Victory Road Tour. That is going to be my only example team for this composition as well. TU, by the way, on this team, absolutely fantastic. Definitely one of the cores of this. The same with Iron Hands. I think anytime you have Miraidon, having an Iron Hands makes a lot of sense. So I think like Lunala, Miraidon, Iron Hands, TU is definitely where you want to look at a starting point. Probably can just start with Michael's team, though. That's definitely a very, very fair point. Things I want to point out, though, cool things here, I think, are the Terra Water and this defensive style Lunala, right? This defensive style, it's going to be your wall now, right? And they actually ran Electric Seed on it, which is super, super cool. And Miraidon never liked Cali Ice, right? So now you have a Pokemon that just loves facing Cali Ice, right? Calyrex Ice does not like going up versus Lunala, especially if you're able to Terra Water, especially with an Electric Seed. You don't even necessarily need to Terra Water. You also get Shadow Shield, and it's a Pokemon that just allows you to do what you want to do very, very easily, in my opinion. And that's one of the true benefits of Lunala is you just don't die. And what makes that go, in my opinion, is having something that can be super, super offensive, like the Miraidon in this case, beside that Lunala, right? What Lunala does best is able to sit on the field a couple times. right? So Lunala can deal with, some of the slower paced teams, that maybe Miraidon can't break through immediately. But the teams Miraidon can break through immediately, Lunala can take one hit from, get maybe its Trick Room up, get maybe a Wide Guard off, and then just send big damage with Miraidon as Miraidon is killing that piece. Very good synergy here as well, especially if you are going to run that Electric Seed variant. A lot of options on Lunala. You can go with like Power Herb, Meteor Beam. They opted for Psyshock. I believe this one is for like the Assault Vest users, maybe Assault Vest Rillaboom. I'm not fully certain on why it was Psyshock. Psychic is another option as well. Overall, you get Trick Room, you get Protect, you get Wide Guard. Lots of cool options onto Lunala. In terms of spread, guys, I'm unfamiliar with this. I'm not going to even try and guess a spread. I know Mike did release his full pace. I will leave that specifically down below. So if you are interested in that, definitely take a look there as a starting point. Overall, Miraidon, though, very cool as well. And you just get to go, choice specs, guys. It's the best item on Miraidon. I'm not going to sit here and pretend that the way you play Miraidon has changed. The way you support Miraidon, the way you get Miraidon into the positions you want will change going into Regulation I. But it's still going to be that choice specs Miraidon more often than not. You're still going to try and just hit things super hard with Electro Drift, Draco Meteor, Volt Switch. That's what you're looking at there. There is cases to be made on if you want to be modest or timid. I think you probably still just get away with modest. I think it's still perfectly fine. Probably Terra Fairy. Not sure if that's accurate, but definitely lots of options for Miraidon, but I do definitely think choice specs is still your strongest option here. And like I said before, we got Mike that paired this with Kiyu and Iron Hands, and I think this is just a super, super solid starting point. Right? You get to go fake out, like Iron Hands Lunala seems like a really good core on its own. Iron Hands Miraidon is very, very strong, right? You get to go fake out and just, if I fake out one, Lunala is never dying. Right, so I can go Lunala, Iron Hands, and pretty much effectively get to do whatever I want that turn. Kiyu covers the, that Calyrex Zamazenta core that we just talked about. It's a very good piece there. I believe they were Choice Scarf on this fish. But either way, tons of options with this core. Definitely different ways to play it out as well. And I think it's just a core that really hasn't been, quote-unquote, optimized yet. I'm talking about these pieces like, obviously they're very good. We know they're very good pieces, right? It just got third at Victory Road. I definitely think this core has a lot of potential moving forward, and that's why I wanted to mention it. It's not necessarily, like, in my opinion, one of the best 5 in the format, but it's definitely a core that needs to be tested and should be tried out because I think there's a lot of potential here. Moving on, we have Kali Shadow Terapagos, and if you guys have been following the channel for a bit, you guys know I am the biggest hater on Terapagos. And the fact of the matter is, I truly don't understand how this team is winning. Like, I see it in concept, right? It's like, oh, I'm weak to fighting, oh, Calyrex destroys those guys and is a very good switch, and oh, I'm weak to, opposing Calyrex, Terapagos destroys that guy, right? Like, I see the synergy. I just have never liked the concept of the core. It's kind of weird, right? And I've also just never liked Terapagos, so I'm going to try and probably end up going very, very quickly over this one. I don't really know too much about it. I do know normally you're going to go Focus Sash onto Calyrex. And you are probably as well going to go with the Calm Mind variant here, which I thought was going to die off. I'm going to be honest with you, right? But I guess you're just going to go Calm Mind, Terra Starstorm. I know some are running Earth Power. I've seen some with Substitute still. But if you're looking at this composition right now, guys, I would definitely take a look at the example teams from the side. The Marco one in particular, I think, is very, very strong. It's just a really strong core, right? Like, and it's just that balanced team that's going to give you abilities to outposition. Kind of like Lunala, in a sense, on the Miraidon team, where it's the piece that just doesn't die, and it's going to give you a chance to outplay your opponent. And I think that's what this composition does. I don't think it's naturally the strongest composition, but I think given its kind of odd synergy, because it does have synergy, but I think given its odd synergy and like the setup concept and how you normally play both of these pieces, right, you're going to see Rillaboom Incineroar on a lot of these compositions, right? And Calyrex Shadow has loved Rillaboom Incin beside it for years. Terapagos has loved Rillaboom Incin beside it all of Regulation G, right? So I think the two supports support these restricted super well, and it's like I said, it's not like a traditional synergy here, but they definitely do gel together pretty well. So I will give them the benefit of the doubt here. If you're going to do this, it's going to be super position based. The concept of this team, in my opinion, is I'm going to outposition my opponent to the best of my ability. And I think this really does well in like a top player's hands. Someone like Marco, right, who knows how to position super well and is always in that positioning mindset where, oh hey, I can just fake out cycle, I can Terra, I can get out of the terrain if I need to, I can get out of weather if I need to, right? Long story short, you are going to control the board state with this team more often than not. That's what you're looking at here. And it actually does a surprisingly good job. I'm the first person to hate on this composition, but I got to give credit to where credit is due. And this team is surprisingly annoying to go up against and is definitely a strong option if you are looking to try out a core like this in Regulation I. All right, moving on kind of to back to my bread and butter, back to my wheelhouse, back to whatever you want to call this. But anyways, we've got Zacian, we've got Kyogre, also known as Swordfish, guys. And this is a core that I've been running for a long time now. And what we're going to see normally beside this is this Incineroar, is that piece that's going to once again just allow you to cycle. I've really liked Rillaboom here as well this season. Regulation I, it feels pretty good just because you get to go like Zacian and Rillaboom and you do a very strong options. And you do have very strong options into the Miraidon. I don't know why I was exaggerating that. You have a lot of options into Miraidon. I don't know what the point of the exaggeration was, but like I said, Zacian, Kyogre, very strong. My issue with it right now is you almost want 7 pieces because personally myself, which is the same exact word, I don't know why I said it twice, right? When I first tested this, and I'm not sure if you guys saw the video, but I had Grimmsnarl, and I believe it was Amoonguss, right? And I think what you want from this core is you're going to want to have speed control that's not Grimmsnarl. I think it's a little slow. I think you're wanting Tailwind on this composition. Maybe a Shenpao could be cool. I think you want to get a little bit more aggressive than the traditional 4, right? But back to the core itself, right? Kyogre covers those ground types. Zacian can sit in front of the grass types. Overall, you hit things super hard, right? The dragon types that sit in front of Kyogre, nope, we got Play Rough for that, right? We've got Behemoth Blade, which is just a broken move. And then, of course, I think generally right now you're going to go Sacred Sword. I think you can definitely go ahead and go Substitute is a very good one. Swords Dance is a very good move here, depending on how you close out the team and what you want to see beside this Zacian and what you want to get out of it. I do like Sacred Sword because the core of Kyogre Zacian can struggle versus the Zamazenta Cali Shadow stuff, which is kind of a problem for it. However, once again, I think if you close the team out properly, especially with like a Tailwind and other pieces like that, I definitely think you're going to have an option to go ahead and have a Sacred Sword here. I don't think it would be, or to drop Sacred Sword, I don't think you necessarily need it. But overall, this is kind of what you're seeing. I think you can get away with a Calm Mind Kyogre. However, right now, Mystic Water, in my opinion, even like a Choice Scarf if you wanted to, is very strong. I think you want to send water moves though. Like your big thing here is you want to be sending water moves. Ice Beam is just too good coverage not to have. And then if you're able to have protect. If you're not, you could go single target water move. Like if you're Choice Scarf, you could technically go Choice Scarf, Terra Water, Terra Blast if you wanted to get a single target water move into Rain to get around all of the wide guards in the format. That is actually something that's very tempting to try out. I haven't really looked into it too much, but now that I've mentioned it, very cool. Tons of options here on the Swordfish composition, guys. It's been a core that's been very good in the past. Tons of options for it. I do think it does really love having Tailwind, right? You can also throw Urshifu here as well. I think that's a very common concept there too, right? Just tons of options for Zacian and Kyogre to really do well. And I think the big part about it is you're able to cycle, right? I'm able to position, and then all of a sudden, if I wanted to do big damage immediately, I can, right? Similar to the Calyrex Shadow Terapagos team that we just talked about, you are going to control the board state, right? I have weather control, I have instant, I have Rillaboom on certain comps, right? And I can cycle this core around, and then I could just do big damage. If I want to just launch Play Roughs, I can. If I want to just launch Behemoth Blades, I can. If I just say, oh, I'm in a good position now, I'm going to Tailwind Water Spout if I choose to have that route, right? All of a sudden, boom, you just do so much damage without necessarily needing to set up that the Calyrex Shadow Terapagos, in my opinion, has. I think Swordfish is a very strong core still. It didn't see too much success in Victory Road, but I have the example team on the side for you guys. However, still a very strong composition in general. Always has been, and I think it always will be. Really love Kyogre though, right? Like, and now that you get to run Water Spout because you don't have to have Kyogre be everything. right? Back in Regulation G, Kyogre on your team kind of had to be everything, right? It had to be that mon that was hitting Water Spouts, hitting Origin Pulses. It kind of also wanted to set up as well, especially on the leftover, on the more balanced variants of Kyogre. It wanted to be the setup piece as well. It doesn't need to be that anymore. So now I can be a balanced Kyogre, not need to be my setup, still have Water Spout, tons of options here. And also a lot of room to play around, right? Instant obviously going to be a very common piece between these two. I really like Rillaboom to help with the Miraidon matchup right now. And I just think Rillaboom, Zacian, Kyogre, either Scarfurge or Instant is just so good into Miraidon stuff, right? That it's hard to justify not having Rillaboom for that. But if you do have the Tailwind mode, then your Zacian just probably one-shots the Miraidon, so you don't necessarily need it, but definitely like that concept. I could probably talk all day about Swordfish, and I can tell right now I'm rambling, so I am going to stop and move on to the next core. And the last core today that made my list, we do have a couple honorable mentions afterwards, but last core that made the list is going to be Cali Ice Miraidon. And this was a composition that was heavily talked about coming into the regulation, right? Everybody said this is going to be one of the teams to beat, and granted, I do think it is. However, I think it's interesting because we see a lot of players right now. They're kind of taking this Miraidon team. They're taking the Miraidon team from Regulation G, which is the Aerobega Miraidon, and they're kind of just throwing a Calyrex Ice on over top of a piece. So, you know, you're seeing the Fire Ponds. Where is it? You're seeing the Ogerpon Fires. You're seeing the Farigiraf. You're seeing the Urshifu or the Whimsicott. I'll put Whimsicott in for now, right? This is the way, in my opinion, this is what we're seeing. And I talked a lot about this in my recap video of the Victory Road tournament. We're seeing a lot of this. We're taking the Calyrex Ice and we are kind of throwing it onto that Miraidon team. However, you're going to see in one of my example teams, which is very, very cool in my opinion, they kind of took a Calyrex Ice team, which was like the Urshifu, the Pelipper, and they kind of put the Miraidon on that variant of a team, which I think is like a super, super cool adaptation, right? And I think that's a way that I would prefer to approach this composition because I don't think Calyrex functions out of Trick Room. Calyrex really likes to be in Trick Room in this metagame. You don't need to be, but a lot more than Regulation G, where nowadays, you know, there's so many threats. There's 2 restricteds on the other side. It's probably faster than you if you're not in Trick Room. Makes it much more difficult for Calyrex to be there. So not being in Trick Room, kind of a little bit problematic for it. However, guys, this composition, the big thing about it is I can talk for 6 years about, you know, Calyrex being slow, Calyrex needing to be fast, Calyrex being in and out of Tailwind, Miraidon being the absolute threat that it is. Once again, guys, it's going to be choice specs, right? There's no secret here, right? You're going to just hit for big damage because why wouldn't you, right? And then Calyrex Ice, you know, Glacial Lance. And that's the big one, right? It's the ice and electric coverage, that bolt, quote unquote bolt beam coverage that we see. Now we get it in both of our restricteds. It is very tough to break. It's pretty much effectively perfect offensive coverage. It goes crazy, right? Oh, I don't want a ground type. They're gonna get their ground or grass type in for my Miraidon. Nah, sorry, Calyrex Ice high. You know, it just works. Oh, you're gonna get your water type into all my Calyrex Ice. No, you aren't. Right? The synergy is very, very strong between those two offensively, which I think is going to make this core very, very good. I think there needs to be different ways to approach it, right? I really like the idea of kind of taking the Miraidon onto the Cali Ice cores as opposed to putting Cali Ice onto the Miraidon cores. However, I think you're going to see success with both, and I think you're also going to see these different makeshift teams as well come out of this core. In terms of spreads, I mean, there's really no benchmarks, which is kind of why I've kind of got away from, as the video kept going, I kind of got less and less into the benchmarks on spreads. Just because, especially with these ones, right? Like, it really depends on how you close out this team, right? I don't know too many attack stats. I know you don't want to really, I wouldn't go lower than 116. 196 is the jump if you go adamant as well. Like it's 116, 196, right? But anywhere in there is going to be a very viable Calyrex Ice, right? Like I don't want to start saying that, yeah, you need to be 196 for this specific benchmark because there isn't really too many benchmarks right now, right? Obviously, I would take a look at this. I would say, okay, can I live like, I don't know, Spell Tag, Astral Barrage from Calyrex Shadow? That could be big moving forward, right? Tons of different ways to approach spread building. I would take a look at some of the example teams as well if you're just looking for a starting point. But honestly, guys, it's a Calyrex and a Miraidon. I don't think, like, the way these pieces function, I don't think you can go wrong with something like this. And same with the Miraidon. You know, you can go max, modest. You can take the spread from Worlds and Regulation G if you wanted to, right? There's a lot of options for these pieces. I'm not going to go too much into spreads here. This is your Electro Drift's Choice Specs one, right? We know what Miraidon does in this case, right? Curious to see how this composition specifically develops. Moving on to some honorable mentions here. We've got Groudon Lunala. Very strong core. Didn't actually have that great of a showcasing in Victory Road, but I still believe in it. Groudon Lunala, Koraidon Lunala, both of those guys are very strong in this position. The type synergy is there. Groudon Lunala obviously has the historical success as well. My issue with this is the way the meta goes right now. And when I was talking about Lunala, the Lunala Miraidon team, I had mentioned that, like, oh, you know, Lunala really appreciates having the Pokemon beside it be that incredible offensive threat, and Lunala can be the passive piece, right? On a composition like this, they're kind of both defensive and both offensive, because you generally want to see like a power or Meteor Beam set on Lunala, and it kind of just feels like that in-between point right now. And when formats first start, in my opinion, it is tough to play that in-between. I think the composition is really good. Groudon Lunala, Koraidon Lunala, we'll call it Sunala for now, I guess we can, but like there is a lot of options for this composition to do well. Obviously, I don't think it's doing crazy good right now, but there is a lot of options for this core to kind of succeed as the metagame goes. So don't give up on this core if you're working on it. Definitely one of those cores that you can still test and can still get usage out of. Moving on now, we got Zacian Kali Shadow. This is a composition that has won Worlds in the past. It is inherently strong. It is going to do well. My issue with it is Incin, right? It's just the Incineroar, and Zacian's not what it once was, right? If Zacian still had its boost, I wouldn't necessarily care too much about the Incineroar. Right? You can get around it. You can just switch out, switch back in. But because now, once you get intimidated, that boost is gone from your Zacian, it becomes a little bit more difficult to pivot around. However, I think Zacian Kali Shadow is still a very, very strong core. Definitely keep an eye on that moving forward, or just test it yourself. Definitely a core that you could try out. Koraidon Kali Shadow. I'm really a strong believer in Koraidon Kali Shadow. I think it matches up very, very well, especially into some of the Zamazenta Kali Shadow teams, depending on how you close out the core. And it's just, the synergy here is great, right? You know, Kali Shadow, once again, similar to that Zamazenta, doesn't like the dark types. Koraidon's got you covered there, you know? Koraidon, not a huge fan of, you know, the faster pieces, but now I have a fast piece, right? Koraidon, not a fan of the psychic types, not a fan of the Kali Ice. Kali Shadow, well, inherently not a fan of Kali Ice either if Trick Room goes up. If you support the rest of the team well, you can shut down Trick Room effectively. Calyrex Shadow does pretty good here. I think this composition is very aggressive in nature. And you can just kind of send damage a little bit more aggressively than, you know, some of the other balancy teams in the format. And then you get to have like some sun stuff beside it as well. Maybe you get to have like, you know, that big old Raging Bolt. Maybe you get to go Fluttermane, although Double Ghost might be a little bit weird. Tons of options. Long story short, I believe in this core. I know it didn't have too much success in the VR tour, but you know what? It's still a strong core. Definitely don't sell it short, guys. Long story short, so that's going to be the honorable mentions there, and that's going to be it for the video as well. Kind of went a little bit off of where I wanted to go with it. Like I said, I wanted to delve into, you know, more example EVs and just kind of give you the more benchmarks, but as it went, it just didn't really feel natural to bring them up. There's so much uncertainty with how this meta is going to go right now. I really just kind of wanted to talk about what was good, what cores I would be trying out. So if you were looking for the benchmarks, I do apologize, but you know, they're still out there. They're still out there. I will definitely break down more teams moving forward as well with more specific benchmarks for that team specifically. But it's very tough to do benchmarks when you're only talking about the cores, right? Because like I have two Pokemon. It's like, well, what do I want to hit? Well, I can hit this benchmark, but that's dependent on if I have Tailwind or not. Oh, I have Icy Wind now. Okay, so maybe this speed stat works, right? A couple benchmarks. I did mention a couple that I got. A lot of the times, though, guys, with these restricted, you can probably go ahead and take like a Regulation G spread, at least as a starting point, right? My concept here was to give you guys starting points, to give you guys ideas on where to take the cores. I think with the example teams, I hopefully was able to do that. If you guys do enjoy this type of video, please feel free to leave a like and subscribe. It really does help out the channel. And of course, I really do appreciate it. But with that, I'm going to get on out of here, and I will catch you all in a future video.